Welcome everyone to Click Moments, where the right information at the right time is a portal from where you are to where you want to be. And I'm your host, Beth Orr, and welcome to episode 11. And this episode is How Do We Get Some Peace? Oh man, how do we get some peace? Been talking to quite a few people about this topic because being on the other side of the most dangerous time of COVID, certainly those people that still have a compromised immune system are taking extra precautions. Those of us that care about those people are also taking precautions. However, for the most part, our nervous systems are not telling us every single day, repeatedly, that we are at risk of dying. I cannot begin to tell you how in the past 3 years, it's like we have experienced a September 11th event. For those of you that were alive during September 11th, can you imagine if we had September 11th every single day for 3 years? This is what we've been experiencing. We've been experiencing a level of fear repeatedly. Our nervous systems have been telling us we are not okay. And now we're on the other side of it for the most part. So what's happening is we're a little discombobulated. And we're like, how do I get calm? How do I get some peace? It's like what we used to know how to do and how we got some peace either doesn't work anymore or it's a little bit more elusive. And I think part of that is because as biological organisms, we weren't meant to experience the kind of dump of stress hormones that we'd been getting for so long. And so now the things that we used to do may actually be things that in the last 3 years, we were telling ourselves that it wasn't safe to do. So if it wasn't safe to do those things in the last 3 years and it's safe today, it's a little confusing to this organism to say, yeah, you're okay. Go ahead and do that thing that for the last 3 years you haven't been able to do. There's probably some part of us that is, instead of giving us a dump of hormones, it's a slow drip, like a saline drip. It's just dripping down inside of us. So there's something inside of us that says something's off. It's not quite the same anymore. But our mind hasn't been able to compute what's happening in our bodies because there's a disconnect between the stress hormones that we're experiencing and feeling and that mental message that says this isn't safe. It's a recently historically accurate message that something isn't safe, but now it suddenly is. For example, I had a friend that contacted me last night and was talking about how amazing it was to go to the movie theater, that she hadn't been to the movie theater in years. And I was thinking to myself, wow, that's an activity that many of us haven't done in a long time, that suddenly we're like, yeah, this is fine, totally okay. But last year, the year before that, it wasn't okay. So some part of us has had to shift, but there hasn't been a conscious, other than, yeah, this is okay now. Well, yeah, maybe your mind understands it's okay now, but does your body understand it's okay now? Is there some part of you that's still trying to make sure that you're safe? And so it's saying to you, hey, pay attention. I don't know about this. Keep your eyes open. And it's telling you that something is going on. So peace might be a little bit more elusive than what it used to be, because so many activities that we do now were on our no list 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago. So to a certain extent, we're having to put some deposits in there and do these activities before we feel safe, before our body feels safe. Our mind may say, go ahead, try these things, do these things. But our bodies are like, caution, pay attention, look around. Maybe don't sit right next to this person that you don't know, but sit 6 feet away, maybe further, right? Maybe you're not going into a packed movie theater, you're going into a half-filled movie theater. You're taking some relative risks. but yet you're paying attention to how great the risk is. And these deposits over time are going to change what our mind says is risky. The very things that you used to find peace in, you're probably going to regain your body's capacity to find them to be peaceful again, right? But it's just going to take some time of going through this and experiencing safety in those environments that most recently over the past few years weren't safe for you to get back to that place. There's kind of some, when I look at this topic too, how do we get some peace? There's like short-term peace and there's long-term peace. So short-term, like just how do we find it in the everyday world, right? Like not cultivating peace, but like just having it in the everyday world. So when we think about that, when I look at peace for myself, I always think about peace, and I'm just going to do this brief science thing, okay? 30 seconds, hang with me. There's the Hertz frequency scale. It's from 0 to 1,000. We don't even know what's beyond 700. It's just a vast space. But we got these low, dense emotions. We know that we can measure the emotion, the frequency of emotions. So you got these heavy shame and guilt are like down here like 20 and 30, and then you get up to anger at 100, and then you get up to even like apathy gets up a little higher. But then 500 is love, 540 is joy, and 600 is peace. You want some of that. You want love and joy and peace in your life. You want these higher level emotions, right? These are light. There's something that gives you this feeling of lightness. You want to stay in those. You want to be marinated in those. You just want to linger in them, right? So when you're looking for peace at 600, you had to pass through love at 500 and joy at 540. So when I'm looking for peace, I'm like, do what you love that gives you joy, and you're going to have peace. Do what you love, what gives you joy, and you're going to find peace. So that's just the short term. If you're looking for how can I find peace? Then ask yourself what gives you love, that you have joy, and then you're going to find that peace. So I actually like in those moments where you're not experiencing peace and you're actually experiencing stress, our brain shifts and we're not able to rationally think and get access to our prefrontal cortex, and we're not able to actually problem solve. How do I get some peace? So I actually have this little box that I put little pieces of paper in, and then I'm like, these are things that give me peace. Now you can just reach in there and you can pull one out, and then you can say, so when you're experiencing stress, it's much easier in order to calm down the brain and go through that exercise. It's much easier to remember I'm going to grab in this box to find something than it is to go through that exercise. That's just a little tip that I do that helps me in that moment. But you still have to go through the exercise ahead of time to say, what gives me peace, right? So when you're looking for that, I look at a couple of different things. I look at 3 different things in particular. I think, where do I feel like I'm experiencing play, rest, and then the big thing that's happening right now are glimmers, okay? Let's start with glimmers, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, glimmers, what's that? And if you know, you're excited about this because it's a relatively new term that we're discovering. So triggers, it's the opposite of that. Triggers are where there's emotion, there's something that's happened, something's triggered you in your environment. So there's a person, a place, an experience, something in your environment has triggered you. And it means that this circumstance, this person, something about this situation brings up an emotion inside of you that reminds you of something from your past. And it causes stress hormones to occur, and your nervous system is reactive, okay? Glimmers is the opposite of that. It means that a person, a situation, an experience, something around you is causing you to have a connection. You're in relation with something that is causing your nervous system to calm down. So when you think about how to find peace, look at what's giving you glimmers. What people, places, circumstances, events help you feel calm, Make your nervous system do that. If you're not sure, pay attention. Like, go do some things that do the next two things, because you're probably going to find your glimmers in moments of rest and play. So when you're playing, I always look at, like, when I'm trying to discover, well, what do you mean by play, right? So many of us are disconnected from, we think we have to learn how to play, which suggests that we have to do something outside of ourselves. We're always looking outside of ourselves for the answers. But what's interesting about play is, who knows how to play really well? You a long time ago. There is a version of you back in the day that knew how to play. Even if you had a lot of challenges in your childhood, there's nobody that I've met, regardless if they say that they have a good childhood or not, there's nobody that I've met that didn't have moments or glimpses of their capacity to play. So think back in the past and say, when you ask yourself, what did I used to do that I used to love? Again, we're hitting the love and joy. That's where you find peace, love and joy. What did I used to do that gave me a tremendous amount of joy? I just loved doing it as a child. Oftentimes we can say, riding our bicycle. Oh man, I loved riding my bicycle, right? You ride around. Back when I was a kid, you could ride for hours. Your parents would be like, it'd be 2:00 in the afternoon. They'd be like, be home by dinner. It's like 4 hours away. Like, you know what kind of things you can get into in 4 hours? All kinds of play can happen in 4 hours. But your bike was the way that you got to those things, right? So what did you do that just was like, ooh, like once you got on the bike, maybe you just kept riding around. Maybe you went to the pool, or you had a little swimming hole or a lake that you went to. I used to have like creeks and lakes and pools and all kinds of stuff that I would go to. So can you do that now? Can you get a bicycle? I mean, if you're like, I can't afford a bicycle, you could probably, on almost any social media, like any place that you can purchase things secondhand, you could probably pick up a bike for under $50. If you spend $50 on lattes this week, you can instead buy a bike, okay? So think about, like, what did you do? Try it. Get a bike. If you have a friend or family member who has a bike and you're like, I haven't ridden a bike forever, I don't even know if I still like it, get their bike. Ask them if you can borrow their bike and see if it brings up a glimmer in you, brings up an emotion in you that's trailing with some other decadent time in your past that you're like, oh my gosh. Like the first time when I was an adult a couple of years ago during COVID, when I had my bike and I literally was riding my bike, I was like a kid. I was literally, remember how you used to go like this and you'd take your hands off the whatever that is, the handlebars. You'd take your hands off the handlebars and just be like, I would do that. I don't recommend that now, by the way. I tried that. It's a little shaky. Back then, it was like, I don't know, maybe I was just a little bit less concerned. I just had a lot more confidence. Maybe you get to that point, I can do it now. I can just go like this. But you find something that you're like, ooh, let me try this. Let me borrow this bike. Let me try this activity. I used to like that. That's play. So again, you're looking to the version of you that does know how to play. Don't tell yourself you don't know how to play. There is some part of you that knows how to play. And just because you can't see that version of you, it's not like your limbs. Your limbs, like your arm is a part of you, but it didn't always used to look like that. When you were a kid, it was a little bitty arm. It grew. So that is still that younger version of you. It's still just flesh and blood. You just grew up. So we have this thought that it's not part of us. It's like back here, but it isn't. Like it isn't. Like we're still in here. The memories of that version of us. If we can remember things from when we were a kid that are bad and they can come up as a trigger, we can remember parts of ourselves that were good and our glimmers, right? So we got to solicit them. We got to bring them out. And oftentimes the stuff that's junk comes out really quick and really easy, and we recognize that. But we don't necessarily recognize how the play and the parts of us that are filled with love and joy are also part of that earlier version of us. So you got the pool, you got the lake, you've got the bicycle. I was just talking to somebody the other day about the sit and spin. Oh my gosh. Do you remember those things? You just go like this and just go in circles and circles and circles and circles and circles. And if you were like me, then you try to stand up and see if you could catch your balance. This is funny because scientifically now we know that twirling, going around in a circle, actually calms us. It's a glimmer. It actually calms us down. There's a science to it. I don't fully understand it. Feel free to look it up and put it in the comments. I'm probably going to look it up after this too. But there's a science to it. There's a reason. Almost everything that you did as a child calmed down your nervous system. Going into nature, I don't know about you, but my family used to take me out into the woods. I used to play around in the woods. I used to climb trees all the time. I loved climbing trees, reading books in trees, right? Climbing trees, going for a walk in the woods. You can still go for a hike. You can do that kind of stuff now. All this stuff is relatively free or inexpensive. Like we do all this stuff for to have fun. But yet the reality is most of the things that are glimmers or play for us are relatively inexpensive or free. Okay? So find those things that you used to do when you were a kid. Maybe it's Play-Doh. I don't know. Play-Doh is really cheap. You can go to Walmart and get Play-Doh. You can go somewhere and get Play-Doh. And you can just squeeze that. They've got slime now that you can squeeze and put. Why do you got to be a kid to use this stuff? I don't understand. It's just a substance that makes us happy. Use it. And a lot of times people think that they have to have kids to do these things. Like you have to have kids to go to an animation movie. I'm single. I'm going to an animation movie. I do that stuff all the time. Like I love being a big kid. I don't need to have kids to do things that we say are for kids. They're not for kids, they're for human beings. If it brings you joy, do it. If you love it, do it. Okay? So you're looking for things that give you, that have that play kind of experience. When I was a kid, I used to have picnics all the time. Before we would go tailgating and we would go to football games. We would lay out a blanket and we would bring a picnic. How many people do a picnic now? Go to the park. Maybe you love sports and you're going to watch the big game. Can you go into your yard or to the park and have a picnic first and tailgate and just go have a good time and then come back and watch the game? Right? Like there's so many different ways that we can have play. And the good thing is that if it's trailing to a positive memory from childhood, then you're going to start, instead of strengthening the trigger cord, you're going to start strengthening the glimmer cord. I mean, what about that? What if we're playing in a way that we're strengthening what was right about us instead of all the things that were wrong? What if we strengthen what we innately knew to do that calmed our nervous systems? What if we intentionally did that? So many times we avoid what hurt us, or we have to dive into fixing what was wrong. But what about leaning into what was right? Let's do that. Let's lean into the good stuff and acknowledge that some part of us knows how to experience love and joy and ultimately peace. The other things besides play is rest. Rest is about recovery. Rest is, I've had a tough day. I've had a lot of stress. I've got some hormones that have chemicals that I want to get off my body. I need to rest, because rest is recovery and it's repair. What do? Rest is not avoiding what happened to us. Rest isn't numbing what happened to us, right? It's not a distraction. It's actually very intentional. It's something that we're not putting something in us that actually makes maybe disease or something happen inside of us. We're actually doing something oftentimes to play or calming down our nervous system in a way that doesn't bring health inside of us, right? So rest is something that we do that actually calms our nervous system, means that we're not still having the slow drip of the chemicals coming out. It's not avoiding something. It's not just putting something aside. Because here's the thing. When you avoid, when you numb, when you distract, that stuff is still there when you go back to life. There's still even the impacts. Like usually there's still the slow drip happening while you're avoiding and numbing and distracting, right? There's still the slow drip. So it's not necessarily something that is helpful. But rest is something that you're doing that none of that stuff is accumulating. You don't have anything activated. It's something that you're just present in this moment. And it's something that is keeping you calm. It could be a glimmer. It could be people, places, and circumstances that help you feel at a resting state. It's not play. It's not you're doing something that is you're experiencing these positive emotions. You know, play is you're doing something that gives you a positive emotion. Rest is not necessarily doing something, right? It's much more sedentary. It's much more an absence of things. I look at meditation as rest. For me, when I talk to people and people are like, "Ooh, I don't do meditation. That's not something I do," right? And I'm like, every single person who says that they don't do meditation, when they do meditation with me, and I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if we try one?" And I always suggest that we do 8 minutes minimum, because 8 minutes is what's scientifically been proven to, over time, have a cumulative effect of positive health benefits, such as less depression, less anxiety, increased focus, all these things. Like there's like 20 different physiological positive effects from meditation. Every single time that I do meditation with somebody, they are actually able to do it, and it's a positive thing. You don't have to do advanced player move meditation, which means total silence. Okay? You don't have to do that. Even people that are Buddhist monks who do this ongoing, they're still going to have thoughts come in. So a lot of times people think, "Oh, I've got these thoughts that are coming in, so I'm doing it wrong." You're not doing it wrong. You're a human being and you have thoughts that come in. It's when the thoughts come in that we shift. We just release them. We accept that we're humans and the thoughts come in, and that we're going to release them, and we're going to go back into this state of calm. And then when another thought comes up, we just release it again. But meditation can be a guided meditation. It could be leading somebody through an experience. And oftentimes that's what I'll do is I'll lead people. And for myself, when I do it alone, then I'm leading myself through breathing in and out. The breath is going in and out. I just feel the breath going in and holding it and going out. And then I focus on love and experiencing times that I've felt love, people that I feel love with, all of that. Then I go through joy, and then I go through peace. And what I'm doing is I'm purposefully, intentionally increasing those emotions in my body. Emotions are just experiences. They're just your experience of something in your body. And so it's a frequency that actually is alive in here. And so I want to cultivate feeling peace and love and joy inside my body. I also want to cultivate this glimmer thread, and knowing that I have the capacity to feel calm and to feel love and joy and peace in my life. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to have these moments where I feel other things or that I'm trying to avoid it. That's not the case. It's life. Different emotions are going to happen. But I get to decide, and you get to decide, which emotional experiences that we cultivate. When we sit around and we think that thoughts that come in just naturally based upon triggers or what's happening in the world, the story that we're telling ourselves, when we activate that and we give our attention to that, then we're focusing on and cultivating something that isn't even true, that isn't healthy for us. But when we intentionally cultivate what's right about us, the ways that we know how to experience joy and play and rest, the ways that we experience peace and love, when we cultivate our belief that we have the capacity to do this, then that becomes what's strong in us. That's what's right with us, right? So we have this choice in our life to cultivate and notice what's right with us and what has been right with us, or to focus on what's wrong with us, right? What's happened to us. And the what's happened to us and what's wrong with us is only beneficial as long as it takes to look at it to say, where do I need to share some time looking at something so that I can have a different perspective and a lens, maybe working with somebody else. I'm a therapist, so I love learning how to see things differently. And once I've realized that, I'm releasing that. I can't, there's no benefit to hanging on to things like that anymore. I'm going to focus on the rest, the repair, the positives, because that's the resting state of me that I want to cultivate in my life. So it's a little riff on how do we find peace, glimmers, rest, play. Take a few breaths into that. Is there some part of you that feels right? Maybe you even feel a little bubbly excitement. I was just talking to somebody the other day about we don't know if it's excitement or anxiety. It's kind of similar inside of us. Choose to see it as something to lean into and to be excited about instead of being anxious and pushing back. My hope for you is that you have more peace in your life, that you have more love and joy in your life. But to get to that peace, you got to pass through some love and some joy. So, a couple things before we wrap up. First of all, I've got some offerings coming up, so check it out, www.bethor.com. Most recently, I have my Authentically You workshop, which starts on September 6th. It's going to be 6 weeks, 2-hour sessions in the evening. If you can't make them all, that's okay. Some people don't make any of them, but they look at the recordings because you're going to get those. 10 people max. There's still some spots left. Would love to see you there. So check it out. Would love to see you join me on that. I also have some online classes. Otherwise, I have some free offerings, like the podcast. And there's also a couple sessions a month where I offer some free conversations. So I would love to connect with you. And I also want to send a shout out to Micah Mackenzie, who is the incredible Asheville artist who did the cover art for Click Moments, the portal pick. So thank you, Micah. And you can check Micah out on Instagram. So to all of you out there, I hope that you have found a click moment in this episode. If you did, don't just reach out to me, which I love it when you reach out to me and tell me the click moments that you've had, but also give it a thumbs up, send it to somebody else, encourage them to subscribe so that it's free. It's free to subscribe. Send it to them so that they get the benefit of getting these free podcast and video casts each week, and that somebody else can get some peace in their life. Give them an opportunity, share this with them. But subscribe, give it a thumbs up. And if you feel so called, also put in there, what was your click moment? Maybe there's somebody thinking about clicking on this episode and they don't know the epiphany that you've had. Share your click moment so that somebody else who's right there hovering over it can say, yes, I would love to have this click moment myself. And they actually click it. So peace and love and joy to you, my friends. And until next week, I hope that you have an amazing week, and thank you for being here with me on this journey.